Alright guys, welcome back to the Stash Project. Taking a whack at the popular video du jour of the week here, and that is the how did I get started in the hobby discussion. Um, I don't know. I don't think I've got anything really remarkable as far as my backstory, really. I started building models sometime in my single digits. My father and his brother were model builders when they were kids. My dad had a few models laying around when I was a kid. I seem to recall working on a few things with him, in the sense of watching him build, basically. Um, Distinctly an NPC Camaro, like an 80s Camaro, uh, as well as he had one of the AMT 1/8 scale uh, Honda little bikes, little mini bikes. He never did finish that one that I'm aware of, because I'm pretty sure I have it someplace, or I had it. I think I sold it because I don't build motorcycles. And I'm trying to think, a couple other little things here and there. We had one of those big 1/8, 1/6 scale working engines. I remember trying to get that to build and work. I think that's a Revell thing, right? The visible engines. And he just sort of like, hey, this is a thing, and you're into cars, and I was into cars. Allegedly, my first word as a child was car, and I know my grandmother used to have this obscene fascination with cutting out of like National Geographic and things like that, because my grandmother had a subscription to that. The ads for cars that were in it, and I could basically do flashcards with cars, as far as this car is a, this car is a, this car is a. And so cars have always been a thing. Not necessarily in the sense of being a car repair guy. I mean, I could do automotive repairs. I tend to leave things like electrical brakes and things that involve gasoline to other people, so that if I can't stop or catch on fire, I can have someone to sue besides myself. But beyond that, I do. I mean, my ignition module went out on my car, and I replaced that here last year. So, I just have never owned the prototypical muscle car, street rod, hot rod type of thing. Not that I object to those things in real life, 1/1 scale. I also have a great big collection of them. Well, muscle cars more than hot rods in 1/25th scale, but I just have never had all at the same time a place to do it, the tools to do it, and the finances to do it. I have like three of those things right now. My garage really is not a place to fix cars. It's not big enough. If you put the car in it, you would no longer have space, kind of deals. Uh, but I have the financial wherewithal and the tools to do stuff with. But anyway, I recall snap tie kits as a kid. Some people who would be children of the 1980s, like people who are Gen X and maybe a little bit older, people would be in their 50s right now, underneath 60, 50 to 60, may remember when I want to say it was Monogram. It may have been Monogram Revell at that point, because they merged in the late 80s. The Model Kit of the Month Club, where you got snap tie kits, would be the very few times I built airplanes and ships. I distinctly remember getting like 1/32nd scale Chevy Malibu, that snap type police car fire truck thing. I think it was a police car still back then, Mount Prospect, and the NASA space shuttle, and a couple other things like that. Are vaguely at the end of MPC there, as far as my building glue kits on my own. So I vaguely remember the golden wheels thing, where you could send in a certain number of those things to get a free model kit. But MPC died right about the time I was 12, so that sort of went away. AMT Blueprinter, being subscribed to that. Actually, somewhere, I don't have them handy to be able to go, oh, look, but somewhere I have correspondence from John O'Neill, who used to be the head of product development at AMT Ertl, of my sending him suggestions for kits as a 12, 13-year-old kid. And God bless him, he wrote back. He may not have realized how young I was. I think I may have said in one of the letters I wrote to him, but back in the actual snail mail days, they were kind of formish letters, but I mean they were personalized, and he did, and it was, to have somebody who at the time, as a kid, you think it's a big giant company when you realize how small model companies really are. Uh, right back to you, especially as a kid, it was kind of neat. But I remember distinctly going into a Hills. Anybody remember Hills? If you're in the Northeast, you remember Hills. It was a department store, so like Kmart. Uh, and buying my first glue model kit on my own. Um, I remember building the Camaro and trying to build the little Honda motorcycle. We were using that non-toxic Tester's glue, the stuff that smelled worse than the Tester's toxic glue. Anybody who remembers and I think they still make the non-toxic glue. I don't know if it stinks like citrus as bad as it used to, but the non-toxic glue, at least in the 1980s, smelled worse than the toxic glue to me. And I know that's a thing that people who've used it can all rally around. That stuff stunk. I don't understand how it was not toxic. Uh, and it was a problem in addition to smelling bad because it wasn't toxic. It didn't melt the plastic together, and it was effectively useless as a glue. So this would be my first glue kit as a kid with glue, like the Custer's red tube, orange tube, however you want to call that color. The red tube glue, Tester's little bottle enamel paints, and a little bigger size. I don't know how many fluid ounces are in that big, but they still make enamel thinner, airbrush cleaner, and I think they still make the gloss and dull coat enamels in those great big glass jars. And I went out in 1986, I guess, and picked this kit up. I bought another one. This is not the original one. I picked this up off eBay. It's been, it's as old as it is right now, so it's seen its fair share of better days. But I bought another one mainly because I wanted to rebuild it at some point. Because what I did with this as a kid was I didn't paint the car itself, because this is molded in black, right? I took gloss yellow, and I painted this trim on the lower part of the car as well as the wheels. Dechrome? What? And all of this in gloss yellow. All of the trim in gloss yellow. And then I proceeded to shellac it. That's really where the term would be. Shellac it in the gloss coat. The enamel gloss coat. It was a disaster. For any young folks getting into the hobby, I assume that's why we're doing these videos, right? To sort of show the young guys where we started at. Your models are going to be disastrous when you start out. Don't feel bad. And we all were there. No matter how good any single YouTuber may be, in seeming like they're unobtainable as far as what they do, just watch the videos, watch the tutorials, and just keep plugging away at it. Persistence and patience pays off a lot in this hobby. But every single one of us started out with unmitigated glue bomb disasters. So don't feel bad. We were all there. And I see a lot of people want to sort of skip the learning phase. They want to go from I bought a model to I can win contests, and it doesn't work like that. So just realize that you're gonna break some stuff, and you're gonna wreck some stuff and whatnot when you start out. But that was where I started at, a Monogram annual kit, and really I was a Monogram aficionado. I had a few Revell kits, but I'll tell you what, I got burned by Revell, and people may remember this, when Peterson Magazine had a contract with them. They did a big line of reissues underneath the Hot Rod magazine banner. Now, there were some new kits in that, like the 69 Camaro, and like the 64 Ford Thunderbolt, the Fairlane. But a lot of those kits were really old, ancient piles of utter crap. And I know there's a fan base out there for those kits, and I don't mean to insult you guys, but let's face facts, they're utter crap. And my parents, and this is back when Sears used to send out a Christmas catalog, we're going backwards here, and they would sell model kits in them. And they were mostly the 3-packs, the big gift sets. And my parents, bless their hearts, bought me the 55, 56, 57 Chevy Hot Rod gift pack. And for people who don't know, back in the day, The 55, 56, and 57 kits were old 1960s tools. Everything open. The doors, the trunk, all of it on plastic hinges. Nothing fit by the 1980s because the tooling was 20 years old and had never been taken care of. This is back in before tooling was a commodity to be saved. This is back when model kits were like $4 or $5. So they were just, this kit was made into what, an 88 and then into a 92. You can't get this anymore because it doesn't exist because the tooling is parked at a 1992 at this point. So the tooling wasn't taken care of and nothing fit. All of it was warped. All of it. I was so bent out of shape at Revell by trying, and I mean, I got them together into piles of utter crap that they were with a 10-year-old building them. But I swore off Revell. For the longest time, I would not buy any Revell kits. I did not get a 69 Camaro when they were new. I never got one of the Fairlanes, because Fairlane's a drag car, and I'm not really into, still wasn't, back then, even then, into drag cars. Never got one of the 64 Fairlanes, because I assumed that all Revell kits were that. And that's sort of one of those little things that you see people complain about, well, I build this kit and it's junk, so all of this is junk. That doesn't necessarily hold true. Again, for the young guys, tap the knowledge of the older folks, who know. I mean, we do the stash report videos so that you know what you're sort of getting into when you're buying things. There's a resource that was not around when I was a kid, even being subscribed to Scale Auto, and being subscribed to a model magazine that was called Car Modeler that used to come out every other month opposite of Scale Auto. They didn't really tell you that the stuff was 50, it was, at the time 30 years old. They would just be like, oh, this new kit got released, blah, 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 and you didn't know it wasn't new. And if you try to build this kit, which is, I don't know how many parts are in this. I don't know if it says. No, it doesn't. But if you try to build this kit, which is like maybe 70 some odd parts, and then you're faced with 110, 120 part, 30-year-old tooling that does nothing fits on it anymore, it's a big culture shock. And it didn't get me off modeling, but it did get me off of Revell as a whole. I did not come back into the Revell fray, really, until the mid-1990s, when also with the Peterson contract, they had the Motor Trend Car of the Year kits. This is what spawned the Pontiac Grand Prix, the Ford Thunderbird, and the Mercury Cougar in the early 1990s. I missed those kits when they came out new. I bought them years later when they were still just languishing around on shelves. And those were brand new tool 1/25th scale kits that were up to date, up to snuff, as it were, and eased me back into Revell. And it wouldn't be too much longer after that, probably 3 or 4 years, that Revell Monogram fully merged, and then Monogram disappeared. I built model kits heavily through my teen years. I started attending model contests when I was about 16 or 17, having my parents drive me around. Used to be a model contest. Well, actually, I know a guy who used to be in the club, but there used to be a model club down by Wheeling, West Virginia. So I used to go to a show in St. Clairsville, Ohio. And then there still is an IPMS club in Butler, Pennsylvania, the Moraine Valley IPMS club. They used to have a show at the Butler Mall. They don't have the show anymore. The club still exists. And then I would go to the Shenango Valley IPMS show, and then I would go to the Three Rivers Auto Modeler show in Pittsburgh. Of those things, the Shenango Valley show and the Pittsburgh show are still in existence. And I built right up pretty much, I want to say, through high school graduation. I got my license when I was normal. I got a girlfriend and all that stuff, but I was still very interested in the cars. I had swung a deal, and this is not something that kids could probably do anymore, but I swung a deal when I was in high school. My mom knew I liked model cars, and this is, again, model cars were now creeping into the $6, $7, $8, $9 range. I remember when the AMT reboxed the Aoshima Lexus LS400. It was one of the first kits in the United States that had photo etch in it in the box, because that's what it came with in Japan. It was reboxed into an AMT kit, and it was like $13.95. It was $5 more than any other model kit at the time. Oh my God, that was like 2 model kits for one. But I was just so blown away with the idea of it being a Lexus and not a U.S. car. Because my hobby shop, which doesn't exist anymore, in Trumbull County, Ohio. Used to be a place called Trumbull Cameron Hobby for anybody who's from that area who's old enough to remember. They really didn't carry Tamiya stuff. They really, then Aoshima didn't exist, Fujimi didn't exist, Hasegawa didn't exist, as far as what I knew, right? So, sometime I moved out of I did a couple of semesters of college. More school wasn't what I wanted to do. Went out and got a real job, got an apartment, moved out of my parents' house. I built custom police cars on and off pretty much the entire time I was out of the hobby with a real job and getting to be an over-the-road truck driver and, you know, various assorted girlfriends in there and whatnot. Always kept my hand in it a little bit, buy a model kit here or there. But I missed out on a swath of model kits. I wasn't subscribed to any of the magazines. Really wasn't in the hobby. But that's why I have all these Crown Victorias and Caprices and stuff like that. It's all stuff that carried over from then. The one thing I did that a lot of people did not do was when I moved out of my parents' house, I took all my models with me. Because the deal I swung was for every A I got in high school from 8th grade, which was when our 8th grade was integrated in the high school. 8th grade was my senior year. We got report cards every 9 weeks, so that's 4 times a year. Every A was a model kit. So by the time I was 18, 19 years old, I had like 50, 60 model kits built up. Because even as a kid, building them out real quick, because I didn't start competing until I was 16, 17 years old. So really only for like the last 2 years of high school was I truly concerned. And even then, they're pretty pitiful efforts compared to what I considered myself to be able to do now. I wasn't building for contests, so ejector pins, seams, what mold lines, what, just paint it and go. There's certainly a freedom about that doesn't exist when you build more seriously, but it is what it is. But what I had 60, 70 model kits built up by then. So I moved them all to Cleveland. I lived in Northeast Ohio, moved them all to Cleveland. And then when I ended up moving out of Cleveland to Erie for a little bit, and then moved from Erie to Southwest Ohio by Cincinnati for a job, I put all of those model kits in storage in Erie. And I kept them there at $40, $50 a month, basically, for 5 years or so, plus moving them around several times in Cleveland. And then I'd have to look when because I took pictures of the stuff when I came off the U-Haul because I didn't even remember what I had. I packed it all in these giant boxes that I had gotten from work that were used to back when this was a new thing, folks. Remember, this was a thing that didn't exist, kids. When freestanding ATMs weren't in every single gas station, when they were a brand new thing, because it used to be you had to go to the bank for an ATM. What? When those things started coming in, we delivered a bunch of them. I was working for a little local delivery company, and we had the boxes from them. These great big die-bowl boxes. Imagine what a freestanding ATM is size-wise. And they're giant shipping crates for those things. So I got a bunch of those things from work when I moved one time, and I had 4 or 5 of those things full of model kits. And so, like I said, I'd have to go look what the date was in pictures, but I think it was probably 7 or 8 years ago now. I went and retrieved all that stuff out of the storage locker because my now wife was like, why are we paying for the storage locker? We live 3 hours away. Just go up there and get it. I had to run a U-Haul to get everything out of there because there was that much stuff. And it was everything from my childhood. A lot of that stuff's been, pitched over the years, except for the models. And, some very significant memorabilia of my childhood. And, so about 6, 7 years ago, I found the internet as far as the modeling forums go. I sort of got back into the hobby a little bit then, started buying some domestic kits that I was, catching up on. And then somewhere along the lines, I found out about Hobby Link Japan. This would be right around, I would say, 2008, 2009, when the Aston Martin Tamiya kit came out. And, well, that has led to a significant import issue. And, so just not as much building, definitely, that needs to go on, which is why we're now in the process of this big renovation in the stash here. And, so in the coming months, we'll have a airbrush set up, and we'll be all moved around and reoriented down here in a much more cohesive work area and a much more ergonomic and user-friendly work area, and hopefully we'll start cranking stuff out again. Won't never be it'll never match what it was when I was a kid when I didn't care, but hopefully it'll be more than one a year. Yeah, not depending on the fickle southwestern Pennsylvania weather and whatnot. So I guess that's pretty much it. I was out of I almost dropped out of the hobby, but I never did. I never got rid of the model kits. I still have 100 models or so from the 1990s. The stuff that I have carried around all these years. Should probably build some of that. So anyway, guys, that's my backstory. So I've been watching everybody's videos. It's an interest. I saw the original video and I was like, oh, okay, that's an interesting idea. And like I said, I've been easily amused by watching everybody's videos, so I've decided to make one too. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. See you guys on the other side.